You can't really peg children and put them in squares and boxes and say this is what they need and they don't need this, when honestly any child with trauma has a whole lot of needs.
Well, welcome to Family Care Learning. I'm Mark Upton. I'm the president of Christian Family Care, and I'm here today with the Goodwins, and we're going to talk a little bit about foster care and your experience with us. I think you've been at Christian Family Care now for almost 30 years?
29 years.
29 years.
We did 1 year with another agency, and we found Christian Family Care and stayed with it.
That's great. That's a good ad for us. So,
Yes.
but we're so, and I know that you've had a tremendous impact over those 29 years on multiple kids that have been in your home, and we want to talk a little bit about that today. And Priscilla, let me just ask you, what made you choose foster care as a ministry?
Well, my mother-in-law started being a foster care provider, and I already had 4 kids, 1 special needs, and she'd say, "Oh, you need to do this." And I'm thinking, sure, 3 kids, 1 special needs kid, and I'm going to add to this. And I'd say, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then, and I watched her, and then we became respite certified for her kiddos that she had. And so we did respite for them. And, it was pretty good because we could interact with our kids, with their kids, and kind of like family started building and, like a little community. And so then one day she said, well, we're having classes. And I told them that I was bringing a special guest. And I was saying, so who's the special guest? She goes, you are. So I went to the training that they had and everything and was recruited there. They're very convincing. You see all these children and stories and other foster parents talking, and you just think, yeah, we always wanted a big family, and we couldn't have any more after we had 5 children, 1 passed away. And so after the 4, we couldn't have any more, and we're thinking, wow, we really wanted 10 kids. I know that sounds odd, but we really did plan. We wanted 10 kids. I wanted 10 kids. Right?
Yes.
And so, we started doing foster care from that point, and honestly, we saw a little girl on Wednesday's Child, and our daughter kept saying, I'm the only girl, I'm the only girl. So we thought, well, we're just going to do girls. And so we reached out through our caseworker and stuff to see if that little girl was still available. And lo and behold, within 6 weeks, she was placed in our home. And so that's where it started.
Wow, thank you. So how many kids do you now have?
Well, our family consists of 11 children now.
11 children.
Because 2 of them we raised, and they've just stayed our kids as adults. So, yeah.
That's great. That's great. So, Richard, you surpassed the 10 that she wanted then. And,
By 1.
By 1. That's wonderful. So, Richard, tell us, what's the difference between, not everybody knows, difference between regular foster care and therapeutic foster care? You or Priscilla, but what would be the difference?
Back then, looking back at it, I didn't really see that much of a difference, because the level of kids that we took back then and that came into our home, we look at it back at it today, that it seems like they were all therapeutic because of the needs and the high level of kids that came into our home.
Most of them were special 3.
Okay.
And we didn't really
explain
know
what a special 3 is for
time.
people that.
But so there were 3 levels. There was there was just level 1, 2, and 3, and so we had a couple of kids that were level 1, and those kids, they were easy to work with. They had some trauma in their life, but they were very young. They adapted very quickly, responded to therapy and treatment, love that, structure, and moved on into adoptions and were very successful. Our kids that stayed with us long term, were Special 3 kids. And those kids were the highest level of care in regular foster care before stepping up to like a residential treatment center at the time or something like that. And for some reason, because we tended to keep our Special 3 kids, we raised a lot of them all the way up through as Special 3. And they were very high needs. When I look at what I do now with therapeutic, we were doing with those kids. Those kids needed a lot of services, and they needed resources. It was back in the day when I'd have one climbing out a window and running, and I'm running down the road this way, just trying to stay behind him, and Richard's trying to keep the rest of them in the house. Because, you know, once one got upset, they all got upset. And so there were a lot of different needs for those kids, where with my level 1 kids, they were pretty happy most of the time. They had little temper tantrums, meltdowns, but were very responsive. My level 3 kids, some of them just had a hard time. Therapy was hard. Working on hard things was hard. And so we learned to do that with those kids. So when they offered the other program, it really wasn't a hard transition for us.
Now, both of you, or Richard, you've been working as well, and you've had kids in the home during this time too. Is that?
Richard took a break for about 10 years.
About 10 years, okay.
Stayed home, and I worked at the school.
And you worked at the school. So how the two of you worked to manage those level 3 kids, the therapeutic kids during that time? And
I was really fortunate because the school that I worked in, I put my kids in school with me there. And so my office sometimes had 2 or 3 of my kids sitting there doing their work with me when they couldn't be in the classroom. And my principal and superintendent was very supportive of that because they wanted to see the success of the kids also. And, you know, so we would get them in the classroom and get them going and reach out to other resources at the school for them. I was able to take them to therapy. I had a flexible schedule.
Great.
And then I did a lot of the role of taking the kids to therapy, to med appointments, and that also to, that way we work together on both of those, my time and her time.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny when you first took over, huh? Because he said to me, I know I've passed country club 20 times today. How did you do this?
Oh.
Because appointments were everywhere, and we had 5 kids at the time. When we had before we were HCTC, we would end up sometimes with a sibling group of 5 kids with our kids, because we had a house full, and all those kids had a different therapist. None of them had the same therapist. So he would be running to one appointment, and then there was another one scheduled with a half hour in between, and he would say to me, I just don't know how you do this. And I said, it'll get easier.
So it wasn't convenient then, the work that you were doing?
No,
it was not convenient.
No. So share with us maybe a story or one story that you remember of where God gave you an opportunity to really have impact on one of the kids in your home.
There was a kiddo that we got when he came into our home. He was high needs. He had a hard time. He was really bonded with the mom figure, and there wasn't back at that time. There wasn't really a dad in the picture, and then he had a hard time because of that. And I don't know, was it like
he was like 6 years old? When we got him.
He was like 6, and then a couple years later.
I think the backtrack, Mom was inconsistent with the visits, so he was always panicked. He was always, is Mom coming? Is she going to come see me? and stuff. And so we spent a lot of time holding, hugging, just nurturing this little guy. He was always afraid, always afraid. And
yeah, he was always afraid of if Mom was coming or not, if she was going to show up or if she didn't. And there was a lot of fear.
And then when he was 8, they
Yeah.
found his birth dad.
Yeah, and like you said, when he was 8, they found his birth dad, and then his birth dad lived in Kentucky, completely in another state, and so we started working with him in regards to that in therapy and in our home, and then we had to work with him, to integrate him with his dad. And he ended up, just the aspect and the thought of flying to another state, he was terrified. And, to progress things a little bit further, when he, after he went to, live with his dad, 15 years later, we get a call, and it was him on the phone.
Oh, wow.
And he had his dad and his stepmom still had our phone number. And the ironic thing is our phone numbers never changed.
The house number.
The house number. So all of a sudden, out of the blue, he called and said, "Is this Mr. and Mrs. Goodwin?"
And it still sounded like him, too.
And,
My
and that
goodness.
was probably the utmost thing that got our heart out of
Yes.
everything,
Yes.
is when we got that call.
That's great.
Yeah.
So he was thriving at that time. Remember, had he
High
been
school.
with his father then for that
Yes,
time? And
because that little boy that left screaming and crying and saying, come with me, because he didn't want to go by himself,
Oh.
because he didn't know Dad. He didn't know
Yeah.
who this person was. And then to have him call years later, and he was in high school, and he was doing good, and he had a job, and he was going to go to college, and he said, "Do you remember me? I'm Justin." And I said, "Yes, I remember you." I said, "We talk about you often because you were the great singer of VeggieTales." And he said, "Yes, I was." Because he would always sing VeggieTales. It would calm him down in the car, and he would just stop crying and get happy with VeggieTales. And so, but yeah, so now he's in college. He has a girlfriend, and he stays in touch, and he'll send an email. And that is just one of those where from hard places, he has become a healed, happy young man.
wow, wonderful! What a blessing that is, both for him,
Yes.
both for Justin, but also for the two of you. That God would give you that affirmation that the work that you're
Yes.
involved in is having a significant impact. That's great. So you mentioned Justin's mother in that. What has been the relationships like with some of bio parents? Have you been able to make connection with the bio parents, and have you been able to see any kind of success in helping them as well thrive in their parenting? Or?
Yes. It's funny, in the very beginning when I first became a foster parent, I had all my ducks in a row and all my squares, and I wasn't going to have anything to do with birth parents because that was too messy and it's going to be a problem. And I was only taking certain kids, and I'd fill out the checklist on what children I would accept. And it was always funny. We would get kids, and I would say to him, "That wasn't the check marks." That's interesting that we have all this other stuff going on. And so we finally learned that you can
God's
fill
like
out
that,
all
doesn't
those
he?
papers you want, but you can't really peg children and put them in squares and boxes and say this is what they need and they don't need this, when honestly any child with trauma has a whole lot of needs. So with Justin's mom, we did try to build a relationship, but because she was backing out of his life, she just was very distant.
Yeah.
And it was tough. It was hard. And she was choosing to let him go to his dad's because she couldn't take care of him.
Yeah.
But with other parents, over time, I learned from my children I adopted, that birth family never goes away in their heart. No matter how much you love and you have that relationship with those kids, there's always that little piece inside of them that sometimes is looking, or someone will say, oh, you look like so-and-so. And, and they would tell me, I would sometimes wonder, could it be? Is it? Because they didn't know who their parents were. And so when our adopted kids were aged out, were 18, any of them that wanted to find parents, we did help them with that and facilitated helping them with that. With the other parents that we've worked with, especially in the HCTC component, our whole goal is for kids to, if the goal is reunification, we want to build as good a relationship as we can with those parents. We want to transfer all that work we do to that mom and dad. We want to see that transfer. We want to see them feel empowered and successful, and for them to know that they can work with their child. They can help overcome the things that were difficult and hard at one time. And they can build a better life with them. And so we do have relationships with several parents. Some of them we still have relationships with, of kids that we've raised, and some of them were long-term, and then they went to their families afterwards, and then those families connected with us. Sometimes a mom calling and saying, what did you do with this? What did you do when this happened? Open for suggestions, advice, help.
Well, you've been a model of that, because that's one of the things we're trying to do at Christian Family Care intentionally, and I know that Director Faust, Michael Faust, is looking at within the whole foster care system, and that's how do we come alongside birth families, bio families, and help strengthen them and be able to provide that safe place for children to be reunited, and so that's an intentionality that we have to come alongside and strengthen, which is wonderful what you did. In some of those cases, kids become available for adoption, and you've obviously chosen adoption. What made you choose adoption, other than maybe getting to your 10, or?
I think we would choose adoption because when you look at a child's life, and now you've already poured 5 or 6 years, reunification hasn't happened. Now this child's on a list for adoption, and you don't see anybody stepping forward. And you know in your heart that every child deserves and should have a long-term family. And so we adopted from that standpoint that it might not be easy, and it might not get easier for a long time, or it might get easier after the adoption. That might be the magic. You just don't know. But the child still deserves that. And so our adoptions have been based out of what is this child's need? Not whether they're going to be, I love you, Mom, I love you, Dad, you're wonderful, but more about what will happen to them staying long-term in foster care and then aging out. What's next? What happens for them? And we've picked up the pieces of a lot of kids that have aged out and had nothing out there. And so we're like, we can't leave you out here on the street. You can't be like this. We need to help you, and reaching out for resources and things. So I think with adopting the children that we've adopted, we looked at that perspective, that they deserve that.
Yeah.
And then, also, some of the kids, some of the guys, when they got age and they aged out, we always, if we had to, we always tried to keep them in our home longer to help them get set up before going out there on their own. And we did that a lot. And, just, help them get things set up, help them if they needed Social Security, get those things going for them. Because once they turn 18, they don't have it, a lot of times.
Right. Well, I know the two of you have been personal champions to me and for me. When I first came to Christian Family Care, I didn't have experience in this arena other than I have some adopted grandchildren who are still search too, as you indicated. I know that the program, you had one of the kids that you ended up adopting really was the impetus for me as I developed a relationship with him over some of the time when he was in here getting therapy with one of our counselors. So the program that we have instituted right now in working and placing older kids for adoption really was birthed out of that relationship with you and with him. And so I think we're placing over 100 kids a year now in permanent homes that are older teens.
Yes.
Because of that, what I saw in you and what I learned from that young man and his plight as we looked at that. And then our whole program, our Starfish program, which is focused on kids that are aging out of foster care, came for that same reason. And our focus has been, we wanted every child to have a permanent home.
Right.
And so that's the main focus. And when they're not able to be in a permanent home, then we're looking at, as you were, how do we provide those supports long term to really help walk with them for a longer term time? And how do we build those relationships even at a younger age to walk with them along those times? So tell us, you worked a lot with teens. Did you choose teens?
No, we started with little ones. And then our kids that we adopted that were long-term with us, they grew up.
Okay.
And so then we had a house full of teens, and they're like, well, we probably shouldn't be placing little ones with the big kids, so why don't we look at 12 to 17, 12 to 18? And I'm looking around thinking, well, that's what I have a house full of anyway, so that's how, and the funny thing is that we started off only going to have girls, and we totally flipped to where we just have boys.
Have boys.
I mean, we'd do respite for girls, but somehow just God's plan flipped it where most of the time we just have boys. I think we've just found it better for us to not mix boys and girls as teenagers.
Right.
Especially when my adopted daughter said one day to her brother, "You're not really my brother. We could get married." I was like, well, wait, that's not how this works. There's laws now. And then I remember talking to him and saying, we're just going to do boys, right?
Yeah.
He's like, yes, I think we're just going to do boys now.
That's wonderful. We've had those kind of discussions in our household too, looking at the kids that have joined our family. Could that happen? Well, you've been in ministry now for almost 30 years doing this work. What would you tell people has been kind of the key to your longevity in being able to stick with this for that long?
We were talking about this yesterday and today, and to be really honest, and it's not to put Christian Family Care up in any, just because you're our agency, but the truth is that if we had not had, when Richard had cancer in 2000, I took a sabbatical, and I had my adopted children. I never had any intention of coming back, especially come back and be HCTC to high needs kids. So we took that year, and I was working at the school and everything, and I never really thought about it. I had my adopted kids; they were all therapeutic, and so I thought, well, we're good, we're fine, But then, one day, a lady from Christian Family Care called up, and she said, hey, I have this little guy, and you used to do respite for him. And I knew right away what his name was. I was like, oh, really? She goes, yeah. And she says, we really think that he would fit with your family. And so I was thinking, okay, I'm working at the school now. I know I'm going to be running up and down the field with this child a lot outside, and all the teachers are going to be watching me. So, because that happened before with my kids at the school. And so then he shows up one day at my work and he says, okay, he's in the car. And I said, who? He said, well, they called me and said, come get him. So then we got him. Well, then we started back, because at that time, the person that was the head of the treatment, the foster, I think she had already started in for the HCTC. Maybe it was just starting up. She said, I really think you guys should come back and do this. Mm-hmm. And so she pulled us back in to Christian Family Care. We never put our license down. We just kind of took that sabbatical, and we came back. If we hadn't had that kind of support, where when things were hard, we could come down here. We could sit. You know, I came down a few times and sat with, there was a man here, Rudy Carver, and I can't tell you how many times I would go sit with him, and he would talk to me and Richard, and he would explain things to us, and he would just encourage us. He wouldn't tell us what to do, but he just gave that security, that, you know, and we went through 5 really intense investigations. And as a foster parent, that is something that can happen. And I remember thinking, I just don't want to do this. This is very hard, and being questioned, your integrity, your intentions, and having a child over here saying all these things, and, you know, knowing that it's coming from their level of trauma, not from what's really happening. But those are hard things to go through. And the agency has always provided extra support. Richard and I went to some counseling on our own here, you know, just to get that build up and support, you know, when we were feeling exhausted and tired, and is this going to work, you know? So I honestly know we couldn't have done that without that kind of support, without that kind of teamwork, to stay in it that long with this level of kids.
So let me just ask each of you here, where have you seen God at work in your life personally through this experience that you've been involved in, this ministry that you've participated in?
Well, one thing I think is that as a foster parent, you need to kind of figure out how and take time for yourself. And as a couple, you know, even if you're in foster care single, you know, just to take time for yourself and have that time, and to work that time in, because if you don't, you know, it does get tiresome, and it does get hard. And when I had the cancer back in 2000, I had my own trauma, and you know, from that, and you know, and you know, like Priscilla said, I came to therapy, you know, down here myself. EMDR, it was amazing when you know, I did that on my own, because it's something that I knew that I needed, and I know God had His hand in that, because it you know, turned a lot of things around and changed my thoughts and changed my focus on everything. And so for me, that's you know, that's an important thing.
And I think for me, God's in it every step of the way. I get up in the morning and I make sure I have my time with God. I learned that from an older foster parent, you know, along the way. And she said, you have to get up early, and you have to take that time with God, and you have to have your relationship with Him. And then you have something to give to the kids. And she said, because they're so needy, you're going to pour it all out, and only Him as the giver can pour into you so that you can keep pouring. And that has been very true. times when, I'm going to sleep in today, and then we're going to just get through this morning. And I would get up and get them up and things, and I was thinking, I should have just had that time. I was able to even just bring it to the kids. I think showing them who God is through your actions, through your kindness, your structure, you're being strong when you need to be strong. And I would tell them, I would say, well, I get in trouble with God. There's no way you get in trouble with God. I get in trouble with God, I said, because if I'm not listening and I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, then everything kind of goes upside down. And I said, then everybody's grouchy and moody, and Mom didn't have her time with God today. And I said, and if Mom gets moody, I don't know why, but all of you have to get moody if I get moody. So I said, it's kind of not fair that Mom's the temperature of the house. And if Mom's not happy and Mom's not doing what she's supposed to be doing, then I'm a little bit grouchy. Then what do you do? Well, we get grouchy too because we think you're mad at us. And I said, I'm not mad at you at all. So, I have to take care of myself. I have to stay involved in Bible studies that I go to. I, talk to other people. And not just foster parents. You have to keep friends. Foster parenting can sometimes eliminate your friends because they don't understand what you're doing. So you have to show them what you're doing to keep those friends so they understand. And I just think that's through that whole relationship with God and having an agency that I can call and say, I need prayer for this. We need prayer in our family. We have some things going on, unspoken prayers, different things we could ask for. God's been there always.
Oh, thank you for sharing. So it sounds, I was going to ask you specifically how you shared about yourself personally, what advice you'd give to others. But it sounds like you've just shared some of that, of making sure that you're carving out time for your own relationship with the Lord, along those carving out time for yourself, and making sure that you're engaging with your friends along those lines as well. Would you say that your marriage is stronger today through this work? Because it doesn't sound like it's been a single affair. It's really been a team work that you've been involved in.
Yeah, we've had a lot of marriage bashing from our kids that we've had in the home.
Sure.
The favorite thing is try to split mom and dad. If I can split mom and dad, I can get mom on my side or dad on my side, and you fall into those traps. All of a sudden, you're cooking and you hear foster dad over here saying something, and something that happened earlier in the day that's a trigger, and now you're thinking, oh, I didn't say anything, and so if you speak out at that moment, that child says, oh, so you don't know what you're talking about. And you feel the drift and the thing. And so then we have to come together, and our big thing is that we stand as a team. We are a together team. We don't work against each other. We work for each other. And, I think advice to foster parents is that take that time together and talk about that day. What was going on? What was happening? Keep your relationship above board. Keep it strong. And when you feel like it's pulling and lagging, reach out. You have a whole community that you can reach out to and say, wow, we're really going through this right now. And get that support. Get those other people involved in your life, that iron on iron that can, touch your life, that can bring that spark back in and rejuvenate.
Yeah. And and I think also we always let our kids know that there's total open communication between the both of us. There's no secrets.
Yep.
And there's no, and they know that right straight up that there's no secrets,
Mm-hmm.
and we're one, and we're together, and whatever happens, she knows about it, and whatever happens for her, I know about it,
Right.
and the kids know that.
That's great.
Sometimes they try to buck that system a little bit, but
And you learn really fast. Like one day he did get a speeding ticket, and he told the boys, "It's my job to tell mom about this. You don't have to say anything." Wrong thing to say. Man, they were out of that car running in the house. Miss Priscilla, guess what? And I said, "What?" "Well, Dad." And I said, wait a minute. Is this something that Dad needs to tell me, or Mr. Richard needs to tell me, or are you supposed to tell me? "Well, he might forget." So I said, "Well, we'll just wait for him to come in," because that is the funny thing about them, So, yeah.
Well, that's good advice for all of us in our own marriages as well. Well, let me just wrap up our time here. Let me ask you just one last question. How would you, or why would you encourage other families to consider high needs children and fostering high needs children?
I would encourage, because every child in care has a trauma. And that's what high needs kids have, deeper traumas. They've had maybe a longer time in it, out of home and in foster care. Some of those kids, some of the things are more traumatic. But because every child in care has had some sort of trauma, and we learn how to deal with that, work with them, I would encourage the high needs kids, because especially as a person working in a school, I see high needs kids all the time, just in our regular families, families that are needing help and stuff. So taking on children with high needs used to be so scary, but we have so many resources now. I'm so grateful and thankful for an agency that never stuck with, okay, this is our protocol and this is our curriculum and this is the way we do it and we're not changing. I appreciate that when role models of different things stopped working and there was more information, more understanding, more insight to the needs of children and how to work with them better and how to bring success in their life. That's available. And here at Christian Family Care, they're always at the top seeing what's out there, what's available, what's out there that's working better than what we're using right now. And it's not that you're throwing things away, you're just adding to your toolkit. And as you add to your toolkit, you have more things to reach for in a situation with a child, and instead of reacting to the child who's being rude and disrespectful, you can say, pause, count to 10. Okay, that child's coming from a place where they're really hurting and they've been really angry, and it's not about me. They're just saying it to me because I'm the safe person in front of them. So you be that safe person for them, because there's so many resources now to help you, to empower you, to let you touch the lives of these kids at whatever age. You can have a very intensive 3-year-old as much as you can a 15 or 16-year-old. There's no age discrimination with the need of a child. So because high needs kids they're amazing kids too. They are smart, they're funny, they have so much to offer, so artistic, a lot of them. They just don't know what their gifts are. Mm-hmm. You get to teach them what their gifts are, to point them out, to say, wow, I really appreciate that you can do this. That's amazing. And as you reach and you touch their life, you see things change. The tantrums get less, the blowouts get less, and
And when things are really intense, you have a resource. You reach out, you network. And so you're not alone. You don't stand alone with these high needs kids, and they bring so much to your life.
Another thing too, in regards to reaching out, is reach out, because there's so many resources out there. There's so many classes today. And if you have a question and you reach out, I guarantee there's already somebody that has gone through it and done it before.
Yeah.
And there's no such thing as a dumb question.
Right.
Well, Richard and Priscilla, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And it's encouraging to me that you finding that the resources that we're trying to develop are helping you. And I think that's been certainly a focus of ours, is to how do we help come alongside our families and make sure that they're well equipped. And so this whole family care learning platform that we're doing is really along those lines to help equip. And so anybody that's listening to this, if they're looking for resources, certainly come on to our website at seaofcare.org and look at our family care learning, and there's classes on trauma and other other classes that you might find helpful just in your own parenting, or certainly as you consider foster parenting. So thank you again so much for coming in today to be a part of this with us. And again, you're real champions for kids, and have been a real encouragement to me over my years at Christian Family Care. And you've certainly, the two of you have influenced me and Christian Family Care in the direction that we've gone. So thank you so much for being with us.
You are
Yes,
welcome.
and thank you it's an honor to be here.
Yes.
Great.
Very much so.
Thank you.